Hello, ladies. Nice to see you again. So, today I thought we'd spend some time doing a little bit of Menopause 101. So, menopause, many people are very surprised to hear, is really just one day out of your life. It's the 1 day anniversary where you've gone 12 consecutive months with no period. Once you hit that milestone, then you're considered in menopause, and anything after that day is considered postmenopause. Everything before that day is considered perimenopause. So, menopause is just 1 day out of your life, but that runway leading up to menopause can take 10 to 15 years. So, it's really important for women to understand what menopause is, what they can do about it, what is going on with their body, and what the long-term effects of having a decrease in our production of our sex hormones has on our health. So let's talk about the pretty typical experience of women who are starting into the transition of menopause. It usually starts around the age of 35, can be earlier if somebody's had the surgical removal of their ovaries. And at 35, our ovaries start to go into retirement. You know, they've been working every month, producing eggs, doing all of this, and then at about the age 35, they start slowing down and getting ready for retirement. So you can actually start having menopausal symptoms after the age of 35. Now, some women who have babies late, in their late 30s, early 40s, can go almost immediately from childbearing into perimenopause. Which can be a very difficult situation because your hormones are really kind of running amok, and it can be a difficult time. So, what is basically happening is, up until 35, your estrogen and your progesterone are nicely balanced with each other, really close together. But then, as our ovaries start to slow down, they both start dropping off in the production, but progesterone has a much steeper decline than estrogen does. So, what your body is then dealing with is not only a decrease in the amount of our sex hormones, but also we now have what's called estrogen dominance, which is the ratio between estrogen and progesterone gets all wonky, where estrogen is much more dominant than progesterone. Now, our estrogen is the hormone that can create weight gain, mood swings, all of these, kind of tumultuous symptoms. And our progesterone is usually there to kind of calm things down. So when you have estrogen dominance, all of those symptoms are even worse than usual because you just don't have the progesterone there to kind of balance things out. So that's where we get all of these symptoms of menopause. Now, this can be a very gradual onset. So women oftentimes, they don't correlate the two. They think that, number one, they're too young to be in menopause or in the transition into menopause because they're in their late 30s, early 40s, and it's kind of the last thing that's on their mind. But the symptoms are there just the same, and they can manifest as having difficulties in your close relationships. If you've noticed that there's a lot more drama happening in your life, a lot of hyper emotionality, a lot more anxiety. Some women who have never had anxiety before in their life will report all of a sudden they're having this anxiety. With the typical weight gain, which is belly fat, that's a result of our hormonal imbalance and elevated levels of our cortisol, which is our stress hormone, then we start to accumulate fat in our belly. And it can be very frustrating for women because if you're anything like me, I think I've been on every single diet on the planet, and nothing would work when I started into my transition. The things that used to work before, I would always be able to lose weight. I mean, granted, I would always put it back on, but that's a whole other story that we can get into later. But it can be very frustrating when the things that used to work no longer work, and we haven't changed our eating habits, we haven't changed our activity level, and yet our middle is expanding. And that can be very distressing to women. It can impact our self-image. It can impact our sexuality and our sense of being attractive to our husbands or to our partners, or if we're single, to be a potential partner. So all of these things create more anxiety in a woman, and that will increase her cortisol levels. Now, cortisol is a fat storing hormone. So it's basically becoming this vicious cycle. And the cortisol causes even more belly fat to be deposited. And that creates more anxiety, which creates more cortisol. And if your cortisol is elevated for a significant amount of time, you can get what's called adrenal fatigue. And that can be a real problem. And so any way that you can reduce your cortisol, any way that you can reduce your anxiety, there are lots of ways to kind of balance your hormones so that you're increasing your fat burning hormones and lowering your fat storing hormones. In fact, I have a 5-day challenge. It's called the Bye Bye Belly Fat 5-day challenge. I'll be running it in the next month or so. And when I have those dates, I'll let you know when they are. But if your hormones are out of balance, it doesn't matter what diet you go on, you simply will not lose weight, because it is a survival mechanism of our body. That if our body believes we are under stress because our cortisol levels are up, it creates a flood of sugar into our blood so that we have the energy to either run away or to fight. That increases our insulin level, which is another fat storing hormone. And then you just end up with this vicious circle where the liver will then convert the blood sugar into more fat. And, if you don't have your hormones in good balance, no matter what exercise you do, no matter what diet you're on, you simply won't lose weight. Or you'll lose some and then you'll put it right back on. So this, as I was saying, can be very distressing for women. And, unfortunately, there's a lot of emotional baggage that comes along with our perception of our sexuality, of our figure, of our attractiveness. And so it can play quite a role in disrupting a woman's self-confidence. And then you add on to that the neurological symptoms of menopause, such as the brain fog and the difficulty concentrating and not being able to remember the simplest things. All of these things kind of chip away and cause more stress for the woman. So not only is she dealing with a lot of internal stress, but at the same time, in her external environment, she may be getting more pressure at work because her performance is kind of slipping because of all the brain fog. She may be having, like I was saying, more drama at home, whether it's in relation to her partner or her children. Kind of the worst case scenario is some women who are going through the transition into menopause also have young daughters who are going through puberty. So you have these two women in your house, and God bless the husband. So anyway, other external stresses that are very common for women during this age are the start of chronic illnesses. When I was going through menopause, I have to admit, I didn't recognize that menopause was contributing to my difficulty managing an illness that I have. It's called essential tremor. It's a progressive neurological movement disorder, and it causes me to shake because I have too many electrical impulses going off in my brain. It's similar to like seizure activity, so they give you anti-seizure medications to deal with it. But like any other chronic illness, essential tremor had quite a profound psychological effect, where I became so self-conscious about the fact that my hands were shaking, that I couldn't drink out of a glass of water without the water spilling out the sides of the glass. Things like that made me want to isolate myself. This is very common for the psychological effects for any kind of chronic illness. And it's at this time when women, the chronic illnesses start popping up, whether it's cancer, breast cancer, cardiovascular disease, diabetes, insulin resistance, all of these things that are having a huge impact on her, not only physically, but also psychologically. And then, of course, if you have aging parents and you're dealing with being a caretaker for the first time, all of these things are compounding on women at this stage, and it can become very, very difficult. And when you have menopause symptoms, that is compounding all of those stressors, and women will pretty much attribute everything to that chronic illness, like I did. I just thought all of these issues were because of my shaking, because it was the most obvious thing. But once I was able to kind of sit back and look at the whole picture, it was like, oh my God, of course my anxiety is so much worse. Of course I'm so self-conscious and I don't feel like I have the confidence, or that I have the same kind of sex appeal to my husband, and all of these things. So menopause can be pretty miserable for some women. And the more you understand what's going on, the better you're going to be able to manage those symptoms. So now, what I'm going to ask you to do is to take an hour, maybe 2 hours, to just be by yourself, be alone, and kind of take inventory of all of these things and see where you might be falling. Are you having any symptoms that you didn't attribute to menopause, but are probably what is happening? That this is menopause, and you're starting the transition. And the thing that you need to realize is, as our body is going through this transition, it's developing new needs that we didn't have before. And I'm going to be getting into those in a few more videos, so that you can really help to support your body, so it's a much easier transition. But in the meantime, the most important thing is to recognize it for yourself. What are the symptoms that you're having? What are your difficulties? Whether you want to journal it, or if you want to record it on your phone, or you want to paint it, whatever it is, if you can get that initial overview of what's happening, and then you can be more effective in how to deal with it. So that is the end of today's video. Please, if you're enjoying this content, hit the subscribe and the like button. And if you'd like to know when future videos come out, if you hit the notification bell, you'll be notified as soon as anything hits YouTube. Okay, y'all, thank you. We'll be seeing you.